Let's address the question that is on everyone's mind right now. Will we know the results of the election tonight? The answer is no, and we never have. I'm Sophie from Democracy Docket, and today I'm going to break down what you should expect to see tonight, what you may see in the following days and weeks, and any antics Trump could try to pull if he loses, especially in court. For years, Americans have become accustomed to going to bed on election night and waking up the next morning knowing who wins because the media has been able to make accurate projections on election outcomes. Even when it takes a few days for the news media to project results, like in 2020, those still aren't the final results and they never have been. Starting on election night, election officials across the country will begin reporting unofficial results and news outlets will start to call races.
On election night, we will get the unofficial results. So the Associated Press and other news outlets will go to county offices around the country and collect the numbers that essentially go from the local polling place to the county offices. So when you go, you vote in person at a local polling place. At the end of the night, they transmit the numbers of votes for each candidate on the machines. Some places they call it in, some places it's done electronically, but they send that to the counties and then the counties tabulate those. And so what the media is reporting on election night are those unofficial results. These are the numbers, the preliminary numbers that have been called in. And in some states, that will be enough for the news outlets to call the race. So, for example, in California, I think they will feel pretty confident, almost immediately calling the race for Kamala Harris. And in Alabama, they will probably feel confident almost immediately calling the race for Donald Trump. In other states, they want to get more of those results to see whether it is matching the historical patterns or not. Before they start unofficially calling the results. But the other thing is, obviously, not all of the votes will be counted on election night. And so, that takes a little bit of time as well.
In every state, the unofficial results reported on election night will include most of the ballots cast in person on election day. In some states, the unofficial results on election night will also include all or some of the absentee ballots and early in-person votes. But it's normal for states to continue counting ballots and reporting results in the days following election day. This is where you may have heard the terms red mirage or blue shift to describe the trends in which the order of ballots are counted and then released to the public. Usually, states count votes cast in person on election day first, which are cast disproportionately by Republican voters. So it may initially look like Republican candidates are in the lead, or what's known as the red mirage. But when states start to count early or mail-in votes, which are disproportionately cast by Democratic voters, a blue shift may begin to occur where Democratic candidates may close in or take over the initial leads by Republican candidates. Donald Trump exploited these normal parts of our democratic processes to cry fraud in 2020 and baselessly claim that Democrats are rigging the outcome. He is likely to do the same again this year if it looks like he may lose. But like I said, the results announced on election night or even in the days after are not official. No states are officially declaring a winner. So when are the results actually official? It begins with the canvass. Canvass is the process where local election officials confirm results by reviewing and finalizing the unofficial results. It happens after every election, not just the presidential election. During the canvass, election officials will count any outstanding ballots that were deemed eligible after Election Day. For example, as voters successfully fix minor mistakes or cure their absentee ballots, those ballots will then be added to the final count. Officials will correct any inadvertent errors that may have occurred when reporting the unofficial results on election night or in the days after. This is done by examining documentation from each precinct to make sure that the precinct results match the results that were reported to the public. During the 2020 election, we know that Donald Trump and his allies filed over 60 lawsuits trying to overturn the election, but 11 of which were filed before news outlets even called the race. With more lawsuits having already been filed this year than in 2020, there is likely to be a lot of lawsuits filed immediately after or even on Election Day. Democracy Docket was the only news outlet tracking and reporting on all of the post-election lawsuits in 2020. And with 2024 already being the most litigated election in American history, it is more important than ever to stay informed. We're offering a special Election Day membership, so if you sign up today, you can get $20 off an annual membership. You'll receive breaking news updates on critical election cases, exclusive analysis from Mark Elias, and premium scoreboards delivered straight to your inbox. You can click the link right here to sign up or in the description. Once the canvas is complete, the certification process begins. Simply put, election certification is a process by which election officials confirm that the tabulation and canvassing of votes is complete and that the results are accurate. What's supposed to be, and what usually is, a mundane statutory task has received much more attention this year, with concerns that pro-Trump election officials will simply refuse to certify should Trump lose. After tabulating all ballots, in person, by mail, absentee, provisional, local election officials certify that the ballot counting is complete and accurate. That process is then repeated at the state level and, in the case of a presidential election, in Congress. It's the final step in the election process that formally declares the final results. As Mark Elias argues, election certifiers are supposed to simply be the scoreboard operators of an election.
If you're on that certification board, your one job are to take the results from the precincts, put them onto a document, okay? Make sure that there are no uncounted ballots like provisional ballots, that those get added into the total, that there's no, that if people have cured ballots, those get added into the total. And then you add up the numbers. If we came up with a system today, you know what we would call the certifiers of election? Microsoft Excel, right? This is an old process where people did this hand math, and it became part of the pageantry of our democracy. People congratulated themselves across the aisle on a job well done. But what the Republicans are trying to do is to insert into that arithmetic process. Their job is not to be players on the field. Their job is to be the scoreboard operator. Someone scores and they put it up on the scoreboard. but they are trying to weaponize that to give Republicans an advantage.
In Georgia, Trump allies on the state election board passed last-minute rules that would have made it easier for county officials to delay certification, but those rules were struck down. And as a result of a separate lawsuit, a Georgia judge ruled that certifying elections is mandatory under state law. Election officials cannot refuse or abstain from certifying. Local officials in Georgia and in other states may still try to refuse or delay certification, but they likely will be sued and forced to certify, as has happened in previous years, such as in Cochise County, Arizona in the 2022 midterm elections. Once every county has certified their jurisdiction's results, the state then certifies the statewide results. After that, for presidential elections, states appoint electors to represent whoever won the popular vote in that state. Maine and Nebraska are the two exceptions to this. In those states, they divide electors by congressional district. These electors meet in mid-December in their respective states and send what is called certificates of ascertainment to the federal government to officially cast their votes for president and vice president. Then finally, on January 6th, Congress meets in a joint session to officially count and certify the Electoral College votes for president and vice president, a ceremonial task that marks the completion of the presidential election. The sitting vice president presides over this session, which means that no matter what happens, Vice President Kamala Harris will be the one overseeing congressional certification this year. But the senators and representatives elected today will be the ones involved in certification. We know Trump exploited this process in 2020 and tried to illegally block Congress's certification of the results and incited a violent mob on the U.S. Capitol. A few days ago, Trump said that he had a little secret with House Speaker Mike Johnson that he will reveal after the election.
And I think with our little secret, we're going to do really well with the House, right? Our little secret is having a big impact. He and I have a secret. We'll tell you what it is when the race is over.
It's pretty clear that this secret plan has something to do with installing Trump as president, even if he loses. Here's what Mark Elias has to say about what that could look like.
I think that Trump looks out at the landscape right now. He's being told by his pollsters and by other people around his campaign that he may very well lose this election, and he is prepared to do whatever it takes to stay in power. And if that means subverting the outcome, he will do that. Now, that is baked in the cake, right? The Republican Party has built a voter suppression war machine. They have prepared to try to undermine certification at the county level and the state level. We've seen that. There's been litigation. They've been losing these cases. And I think that in the post-election, we can assume that if that's what it comes to, that's what they'll try to do again, as they tried in 2020 and failed, and tried in 2022 and failed, and they'll try in 2024 and fail. The first step will be to try to prevent counties from certifying election results, then trying to prevent states from certifying election results. The good news I have for folks is that the courts have been pretty uniform, or not pretty, they have been completely uniform in rejecting these efforts. And I have every expectation that lawyers like me and others will go to court and continue to beat back these efforts to subvert the election results. So what do they do next? Well, then they try to get, in more desperate efforts, they try to get the courts to throw out votes. And this is where Mike Johnson comes in. In 2020, the federal elected official most responsible for January 6th, other than Donald Trump, was Mike Johnson. Now, that's not me saying sour grapes now that he's been elected speaker. I said this about Mike Johnson before I knew who the hell Mike Johnson was, when he was just an obscure congressman from Louisiana, because he led the effort to get House Republicans at a time where there was disorganization in their conference. He led the effort to organize them in December of 2020 to all sign onto a brief in the US Supreme Court to throw out the election results in 4 states. Okay, so this Louisiana congressman says basically he's coordinating with the Trump campaign and Donald Trump, and he wants House Republicans to unite behind this idea, first to go to court and throw out the election results. When that fails, and it does fail, he then is instrumental in rallying them behind trying to prevent certification in the halls of Congress on the night of January 6th. Now that fails. So is it any surprise that Donald Trump thinks he has a secret? It is not really a secret, right? It's like the game plan they tried in 2020, and he wants to try it again. There are lots of reasons why that's not going to succeed, none the least of which that the Electoral Count Reform Act has made it harder for that. Congress has since passed a new law that makes it harder for that to achieve. It's also not going to be able to achieve because Hakeem Jeffries is going to be the speaker on January 6th. Well, on January 3rd, the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate will reorganize, and the new members of the Congress will vote and elect a new speaker. And I have every expectation that in addition to Chuck Schumer being back as the majority leader in the U.S. Senate, Hakeem Jeffries will be leading the House Democrats and the House as Speaker. And therefore, people have nothing to worry about.
Here's Congressman and constitutional law expert Jamie Raskin on what has changed between January 6, 2021 and now to prevent a repeat of the insurrection.
As long as the certificates of ascertainment are not messed with and they come in okay, and as long as we're able to seat the members of the House and the Senate, then I think, we will be able to defend against any form of mischief that arises. We certainly are going to be much safer against the violence. We're not going to have Donald Trump in the office inciting insurrectionary violence and then sitting on his hands or munching hamburgers and French fries, watching the proceedings on TV as Congress gets overrun by Proud Boys and Oath Keepers and other violence seekers. We have Joe Biden there, so he would obviously call the National Guard in a situation like that. But we're going to have this has already been declared to be a national security event, so we're going to have much better security to begin with. We're going to have non-scalable fencing and so on. So I think that we're going to do much better in terms of protecting the proceedings on January 6th. I hope that January 3rd will go the same way. We're counting on Mark Elias and the great teams of lawyers we have around the country to prevent the certification process from being defeated and thwarted in different ways earlier on. I don't think, or we're going to be in a much better position to stop them on January 6th if that's their plan. I'm much more worried about what they're going to do to try to throw monkey wrenches in earlier in the process at the precinct level, at the county level, and at the state level.
In addition to the efforts to disrupt the certification process, you can expect to see an onslaught of litigation from Republicans in the immediate post-election period if it looks like Trump is going to lose. One major litigation theme to look out for is the GOP trying to block states from counting ballots that arrived after Election Day, even if the state's law allows for that. The Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals recently ruled that Mississippi's law that allows for mail-in ballots to be counted if they are postmarked by Election Day but received a few days after violates federal law. While the court's decision has not had an immediate impact on Mississippi's deadline for this year, the RNC has already urged Texas to abandon its state law and block the counting of any ballots received after Election Day. Currently, Texas law allows ballots to be counted if they are postmarked by Election Day but received one day after. The RNC is arguing that the Fifth Circuit's decision prevents Texas from counting these late arriving ballots because the Fifth Circuit covers Texas. Other lawsuits we can expect to see in the post-election period deal with what ballots should be allowed to be fixed or cured, and if those votes should be counted, whether certain votes from military and overseas voters should be counted, whether ballots from voters whose eligibility was challenged should be counted. Thanks for watching Democracy Docket. Again, to stay up to date on any and all of these election litigation updates, please subscribe to our newsletters. You will get all of that information delivered straight to your inbox. And if you want to support our work, please consider upgrading to a premium membership. You can get $20 off an annual membership today. You can click the link right here or in the description of this video to sign up. I'm Sophie, and I'll see you next time.